Góðan daginn allir, velkomin á þennan föstudags fyrirlestur. Við erum með Xiaobing eða Bing og hún starfar hjá Marel og hún einnig leikari, leik í Stella Blomqvist og hún ætlar að fara aðeins yfir Data Lake og vegferðina í þeirra með þeirra að farið í gegnum það. So, Bing, how are you doing? And welcome to this issue user group.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you, Gisli. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, it's great. So I'll just give you the stage and you can start.
Sure. Let me share my screen. Give me a second. I need to make sure I'm sharing the correct screen. Yes, I think it's correct, isn't it? It's a presentation screen. Yeah.
Yep, correct one.
Let me find it. Yeah, okay. All right. Again, thank you, Gisli. It's really, we are really glad to share our experience, exchange knowledge with Azure User Group. Everyone, hello, I'm Bing, like the Microsoft search engine. That's my name, Bing. I'm working at the Marel Business Intelligence team as a BI solution architect. So today we are going to share with you our transformation from on-prem data warehouse to the on-cloud data platform, our journey. Let's see. Well, I expect most people really know Marel. We are a machinery and solution provider. So in its 40 years history, Marel has grown from 45 people in Iceland to a global company with more than 7,000 employees in over 30 countries. And equally famous, I think, is Marel's strategy of growth through innovation and acquisition. With a rapid acquisition, it gives us the great challenge on our data platform. So you can see, due to the acquisition, our application landscape is very complicated. We have a handful of different ERP systems. Most importantly, we have SAP ECC, S/4HANA, Dynamics AX, Panta, and quite a few others as well. So Marel's BI team in the past few years has built an enterprise data warehouse based on SQL Server on-prem, using Time Extender as the ETL tool. Our enterprise data warehouse, which we basically refer to as the EDW, is considered as one of our crown jewel applications. It sources data from more than 30 data sources and processing more than 11 terabytes of data every day. And on top of the EDW, we basically use Microsoft Power BI as a BI platform. 1/3 of Marel's employees are on this platform actively. And you can see we have more than 3,000 data set in the Power BI platform. So the challenges in Marel we're facing is really not in general, it's not the amount of data we're processing. It's about the diverse landscape and the different user requirements. So that's the main challenge we are facing in Marel. And we can see the organization's appetite for data and analytics is really just increasing constantly. So even though the EDW has been doing a really great job to support the business need, we do see there's limitations, including we can only do daily loads right now. The scalability on the EDW is really just at its maximum. And the time to market, due to the current tool we are using for our ETL process, we can only deploy every around 2 weeks. So there's quite a few limitations. We do like much like we do push very urgent request through the deployment pipeline, but in general, we follow the sprint to do a deployment every 2 weeks. So all these are the limitations we are facing with the current platform. Therefore, we started looking at the cloud technology from May last year. And with so many options out there, we set out a few principles as a starting point. First, we decided we are going to start the cloud, coming back, as a greenfield. So not limiting ourselves with old architecture. And also we decided we are just going to build this new platform on top of Azure because we are already a Microsoft shop. So our bigger environment really require us to not to complicate our technology landscape even further. Then we decided this platform, apart from supporting the current batch, need to be able to support near real-time patterns, need to be able to be more scalable, stable, and support continuous integration and deployment. More than that, on top of structured data, even though that's still our focus, we need a new platform to be able to support semi-structured, to be able to support machine learning and artificial intelligence when required. So with all this requirement in mind, we started our research on a reference architecture. So where to start? With the cloud platform and the technology, some companies basically start by doing the lift and shift. So moving your on-prem infrastructure to the cloud. That's a valid approach as well. But for us, what we thought is we really want to utilize all the advanced capabilities of the cloud. So not limiting ourselves with the old architecture of the traditional data warehouse. Therefore, the next option might be you build a data lake first. And on top of the data lake, you look at your use cases. So traditional BI, data scientist, machine learning. So would you build a data warehouse on top of your data lake? That's another approach. However, you probably then will face the challenge of the inconsistent definition of data and metadata management, data governance as a whole. So while doing the research, we were introduced to a new architecture called the Data Lakehouse, which supposed to combine the best features of the both worlds, data warehousing and the data lake. So here is the reference architecture we are using. Why it's jumping? So as you can see, this architecture, it has Databricks at its core. So Databricks is a unified analytics platform on top of Apache Spark. Therefore, it unifies data science, data engineering on the same platform. To move the data to the cloud, we chose to use Azure Data Factory. So Azure Data Factory provide, I have no idea why it's keep moving automatically. So we use Azure Data Factory, coming back. Okay, if it jumps, I'll just let it be. To move data into the cloud. So Azure Data Factory give us inbuilt connectors. For example, last year around September, so Microsoft released SAP. We are on the architecture slides. We were talking about, moving data to the cloud. So we use Azure Data Factory. And last year, September, Microsoft released the SAP CDC connector, basically is a change data capture connector to enable us to move SAP transactional data incrementally into the cloud. So that's one of the reasons we choose Azure Data Factory. just for your information, we started this journey while trying to use pipeline within Synapse. So we were hoping to use Synapse as a whole platform. So the pipeline in Synapse should have the same code base as Azure Data Factory, but our experience told us the new features goes into Azure Data Factory much quicker than the pipeline. Therefore, we switched to focus on just Azure Data Factory. And for orchestration, we also use Azure Data Factory to basically leverage the low-code capability of the tool. Transformation, we basically use notebooks. So you can see the in the core of this architecture, we basically use Databricks. So all the transformation logic is written within notebooks. And then the Azure Data Factory just used as orchestration tool to run the notebooks within Databricks. And the storage layer basically is a Databricks Delta format, also called a Data Lake, on top of Azure Data Lake. So Azure Data Lake provides you the low-cost benefit and also the unified platform for both structured and unstructured data. Then the Delta Lake is an open source storage layer on top of the lake. So it extends the Parquet data format with a file-based transaction log for asset transaction, also a metadata management layer. Then the governance, we are basically investigating using Purview. Azure, no, it's not called Azure Purview now. It's called Microsoft Purview. Also, there's also another option called the Databricks Unity Catalog. We are still at the phase of investigating which tool can be used in what kind of scenario. Then security-wise, there's Azure Active Directory, Key Vault policy are used for security part. Presentation layer is also very interesting. We started using Azure Synapse Serverless mainly because of the cost benefit. There's also many other options. You can also use Azure Synapse Dedicate, as well as Databricks SQL Serverless. Databricks SQL Serverless was just made generally available yesterday. So all these provide the SQL endpoint to your user community, including Power BI. So this really is the main architecture. In general, people are most interested in this architecture and has more questions. We can come back to this if you have more questions later on. And the data in the lake are organized based on Databricks Medallion architecture. So it's basically a data design pattern. Most data warehouse professionals are very familiar with. Basically, it's a layered data architecture. Then you move data through different layers, gradually improve its quality and structure. This is pretty much like a clean layer, a conform layer, and a data mart layer. But in this Databricks, the terminology is called bronze, silver, and gold. Another interesting thing in our implementation is we adopted an open source metadata-driven processing framework. So it enables new ways of working with reusable data pipelines, therefore to reduce the time to market. So basically what it does is it uses Azure Data Factory and Azure functions and also a Azure SQL database. So you build like grandparents, parents, child pipeline as a generic pipeline. Then in the SQL database, you have a metadata database. So you can input source, say SAP, which source table, which columns, which column is your primary key columns, all this metadata. Then you also configure your target metadata in the database. Say in the silver layer, this would be the target table name, target column, and the column data type. As soon as you configure the metadata, the generic pipeline should be able to take the data from the source to the silver layer automatically, because we do not do business logic between the source to the silver layer. We only add certain metadata, technical metadata in the bronze layer and the silver layer. Therefore, we can have more generic patterns how we take data into the lake. For example, we can have one pattern to say we want to keep history in the silver layer, another pattern to say we don't keep history, we only get the latest data from the source into the silver layer. So therefore, we should be able to bring in new tables or new data objects into the lake much quicker. So from project management point of view, our data lakehouse journey has been going through 4 phases. The first one, last year, May to June, is basically just looking at like research, looking at the platform, the reference architecture. And then we did a pilot for SAP sales data using the CDC connector I mentioned. So bring the data using all these components I talked about end-to-end from source to Power BI. After that, we focused on building CI/CD pipeline, so set up. For the pilot, we only had a development environment. So for the third phase, we built the staging environment and the production, then build the CI/CD pipeline so that we can push changes using the pipeline. Having the production going live. And after that, basically, the fourth phase is the afterlife phase, which we are in now. For this phase, we basically now have a hybrid landscape. We still have our on-prem EDW, while we are building up our new Azure data platform. So we actually have a 7-year hybrid transition plan. From our past experience, we know when you have so many active users on existing platform, it is not realistic just to rebuild everything on a new platform. And also, we don't want to rebuild all the old solutions which are working perfectly fine. We want to utilize the new platform to build something new, focusing more on that. Therefore, for the 7 years, we have a few tracks. On the existing data warehouse, we basically have a plan how to slowly reducing the new development on that platform and keep the platform stable. From both content and infrastructure point of view, we have a 7-year plan. Then on the data lakehouse track, we also have an infrastructure plan and a content plan. Infrastructure part, how we slowly adding in more capabilities, and on the content part, how we gradually increase the content in this platform. Then we would encourage the user to build new BI solutions or machine learning solutions on the new platform, reducing the usage of the old platform slowly. So just sharing some of the learnings from our side. It's a very interesting journey. So the first thing we really learned is how important is the commitment from both the management and our team. There's always plenty of projects ongoing and limited resources. So as a result, technology transformation initiatives are often dropped after the proof of concept because they don't pay off immediately. Therefore, we treat our cloud project as a midterm, so-called Horizon 2 project, separating it from the short-term return project, which are still running on our current EDW platform. We recognize the Horizon 2 project is of different nature, need different way of management. so that we can protect the resource needed, also set the business expectation accordingly, which has proven to be very important. And the Azure and the Databricks really is completely new to our team. So to be successful, we work very closely with our implementation partner and vendors, like one team. We also actively leverage various trainings and support programs from Microsoft and Databricks. There are so many free online trainings, and also you can engage Microsoft in your solution review and troubleshooting, which also proven to be crucial. And we are now about 1 year into this journey. So we can already see the business value of the new platform. The first thing we notice really is the performance. It is quite amazing. For example, we have a really big kind of ETL processing job. We were trying to implement on SQL Server before. It's basically trying to process a tree structure data, the basically bill of material. Then we have like hundreds of thousands of different tree structure we're trying to loop through. And it used to run for days. We never really finished the processing. But in this new architecture, we were able to finish it in 30 minutes. Another real benefit really hit us immediately is the agility. You basically can provision a new service, a new instance, a new cluster, with a few clicks. So you can try different approaches when needed. You can do a quick POC very quickly. So, for example, I mentioned the SQL endpoint. We started with the Synapse serverless because of the cost benefit. But at the same time, there are certain limitations with the serverless. So far, that's not a big concern for us. But if you do want something perform much quicker for your end user, you can explore Synapse dedicated. Databricks SQL now also has a serverless, as I mentioned, started general availability from yesterday. We are going to investigate in Databricks SQL because they claim they can do things faster and cheaper compared to Synapse serverless. So just for those maybe not very familiar with the serverless and the dedicated, basically with the dedicated, you basically have dedicated resources as your data warehouse SQL endpoint. That means you will be taking data from your lake into another data warehouse layer. With our architecture, we don't need to do further data transformation. But if you take the data into the Synapse dedicated, or maybe Databricks dedicated, that means you incur more storage. And the cluster for running your queries will always be on. That's why it's more expensive. With the serverless, basically you are not taking data into this layer. What you do is you creating like views on top of your data lake house. Therefore, there's no storage, and the cluster only start when you have query running. That's how you save basically the cost. Therefore, it's it's not going to perform as good as the dedicated. Another learning for us, which we really see the benefit, is also the time to market. We are able to build up the CI/CD pipeline using DevOps. So here we are basically showing our branching strategy. Now we can push our new changes to the production as frequently as we need when the code is ready and there's a user requirement. So far, I think I have been mainly talking about really the benefit. The cost part, if you look at what the they claim, the cloud claim, well, what's the benefit for business? The transparency, definitely, we also see the transparency of the cost. That's a really good thing. On the Azure, your own subscription, you can see the cost breakdown very easily. On saving the cost part, obviously it's moving the cost from like a capital expense to operational expense that probably provide some benefit for management. But if it's definitely going to be cheaper, that's actually the part you need to be very careful with. With our experience, the cost can actually build up without you realizing very, very quickly. So therefore, you really need to plan on your cost architecture. One thing we learned from like just other companies and also like our own like teams previous experience from other work is using the reserved instances. If you know you need a certain amount of capability, reserving them gives you quite a big discount on the resource on Azure. For Databricks, you can also do the similar thing. You can prepay what is so-called a Databricks unit, I think. So that's how Databricks calculate their cost. With Databricks cost, basically there's two parts. One is when the computation is done. So basically the usage cost, when you use the compute instances like a cluster or the Databricks SQL warehouse, that is calculated using Databricks unit. But then the computation done are executed on Linux virtual machines. These virtual machines, the resource are charged separately by Azure. So that's something you need to consider. There's two parts. Also, like then when you build your pipeline, instead of doing the full load, if you can plan to do incremental load, that obviously reduce the amount of computation, especially when you use serverless. You only pay for how much you use. So this will also help controlling cost. Data retention, like with Delta Lake on top of the Azure Data Lake. Basically, the Delta Lake keeps the logs, so you can do time travel. So default, I think they keep a history of 3 months. So just knowing your data retention requirement, you can play with this area as well. Also, there's another thing is about the cost allocation. So we plan to look at how we can distribute the cost, at least make it transparent to different business units. So both from processing point of view and also from querying point of view. Then there's a possibility you can set up a different cluster for different data processing. Therefore, a cluster can be dedicated to a certain business unit. Hence, the cost can be more transparent. Another learning is the complexity. So even though this whole platform, this data lake platform, was presented to us as one platform, but there's actually so many services on this platform. For example, to configure the secured access with private endpoint, we have to configure all the different resource types as listed here. You can see when you need to configure a Synapse workspace, Azure Data Factory, Azure Databricks workspace, Azure storage account, Azure function, Azure SQL database, keyword. So it is quite complicated. I feel this is a downside in a way, depending on what you're looking for when you select a reference architecture. This architecture gives you more control, but it does require deep knowledge when you're setting it up and going forward for the operation as well. At the same time, it's the same for access control. I feel it's quite complicated. You need to control the access in Azure for the Azure resources. Then in Synapse workspace, Synapse serverless. Then going forward, if we try the Databricks, there's also Databricks serverless, and Databricks workspace, DevOps access. So far we have been trying to basically only use Azure groups. So in Azure, we have very clear principles. We use the role-based access control model to provide access. We don't give individual accesses, but to utilize the groups with set up within Azure Active Directory, like so for Databricks, you can do it, but it's not straightforward. You really need to use this what called a CIM provision connector, which we haven't done yet. That's our next step. The same with DevOps. I think you can also utilize the Azure groups, but it's not automatic. We are just all this access control, how to make them more consistent. That's our next step. Okay, so this is basically my presentation. I think now we are happy to hear if you have questions or just maybe share your experience. You probably have used some of these services, and yeah, just share your experience with us. That would be really good.
Sure. Are there any questions? I have actually a few questions regarding in noting them down here. The CDC connector. You have to have probably all the underlying software technology support the CDC.
Yes.
Both the Microsoft SQL and the SAP.
Yeah.
Did you upgrade all the servers or technology behind to the latest so you can support the CDC, or was that something that was in the plan?
Okay. Yeah, the CDC connector is not like a generic CDC connector. It's just for SAP. So it utilizes the queues within SAP already. So to my knowledge, I didn't know we needed an upgrade on the SAP. We just need to set up like the subscriptions within SAP. But if you are SAP ECC or SAP S/4HANA user, you probably know SAP part is quite complicated. Actually, the most challenge is on how to align with the SAP team to be able to set it up. It requires the SAP basically doing certain things like only on weekend, so you don't interfere with the majority of the users, so you don't lose transactions while you're setting this up. So yeah, it's quite challenging.
Yeah, it is. The second question was the when you are, that define the data storage itself. All the old data that is kept in there that's not in use. Do you have some kind of cold storage or something that's non-used data, which is just moved down?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, data retention part, actually, yeah, this is touching upon the cost I didn't mention. When you're talking about the cold storage or warm storage, so data retention, like which data should be kept where, we haven't designed that part yet. But that's in our infrastructure roadmap. So we have a 7-year roadmap, but within this year, we at least will look into this part you just mentioned. Really good question. Actually, would be interesting if someone has done this before. Like what's your experience? How you do this? And when you move data to the cold storage. I recall knowledge from AWS. Then when you retrieve the data, it also incur cost and also it takes time. So you have to plan, right? So
yeah. I haven't tested, so I can't answer this question. So
yeah,
maybe someone in the group can answer this. the third question was regarding the setup of the environment. You mentioned that it was quite complicated to set it up. Do you use some kind of infrastructure as a code, or do you use that? Do you use Terraform or Bicep, or what kind of tools do you use?
Right now, this is a conscious decision. So basically, so far, we are not using infrastructure as a code, because even though it's really a lot of services, but we have been doing so many things which we have to redo. So because it's a learning process for the whole team as well. Therefore, we basically have been creating like resources in all three environments manually. Infrastructure as a code, first is the knowledge within the team. We need to basically, we have some people have some knowledge, but for the whole team to work on it, we plan it after this summer. We are going to look into this. So far, even though it's a lot of manual work, but we are not constantly delivering new resource into the staging and the production. So it's kind of manageable. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if you're looking into this, I think you should look into a session that will be in June regarding Terraform, which will be designing Terraform code. I will be having that session. Okay. So I think you should attend that session. It would be good.
Brilliant. Please, you will just post it in where?
In the Azure group forum.
Okay. Good.
So, is there any questions?
And also, if someone found this interesting or have question later, also feel free to contact us. You can see we are really still at the very beginning of this journey, like the retention, like the infrastructure as a code. There are so many things we need to do. And also just the things we are doing right now doesn't mean it's not going to change. So it would be really good from the Azure user community to kind of exchange your knowledge and experience with us.
How about, there are, in the future, Microsoft is in preview with OpenAI. Have you, looked into that somewhat, or are you thinking about that as
we are very interested. We actually from a month ago, there's this Microsoft, in Iceland, this presentation, and what's the company called? The one using AI, Lucidity, right? Yeah. So basically, they are using as the OpenAI and training the model using their own data. Then provide services, using that AI capability. We are very much interested. We are not really planning on any project yet, but this capability of training a model with your data and answer your business questions, that's something I really think many companies would benefit. We already applied for, we already got the Azure OpenAI service access, but no plan for a particular project yet.
Okay. Yeah, that's quite interesting thing to look at into the future, because I think maybe when it comes to data, when we are we want data in the future, we want to ask it more direct. I want next 3 months of as my previous teacher said, I want to have how much flour I need for the next 3 months, for my bakery. So I need to ask that question. So that's really good way to ask instead of doing some queries. And you have to have some kind of speciality to do this query.
Yeah, so, exactly. And also, we were just told, like in Power BI, they are already incorporate the AI functionality in this so-called quick measure. So you can basically type in a question, then the quick measure would be able to construct, the DAX behind the scene for you, just based on natural language requirement, instead of everyone need to know the language to be able to create a measure. That is, I believe, in preview now for Iceland. So that's something if people interested also should look into.
Yeah. So I think since there are no more questions, that unless you have any questions for me.
I'm not sure. Am I part of this group? I wasn't sure how I should be joining group, so I get notifications from your other events. It's just a Facebook group, or
it is a Facebook group. I am trying to get a sponsorship for Meetup from Microsoft, meetup.com, so I can get more like broader community. But Facebook is the primary source of contact. So so I will post everything there.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Gisli. Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you for coming. This was very nice to see how you do things. It's very interesting, and hopefully we'll get you back sometime soon.
Is there a hands? Is this a question or not? Oh no, maybe not. Oh.
Yeah, there is. Vifus has a hand here. Just unmute Vifus.
Yes. No. I'm online, I think. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's really interesting. We're on the same journey, although very much smaller here at the Finance Ministry.
Okay.
One question actually. I see that this presentation has been recorded. Would it be possible to to get access to the recording, just to show others that would definitely be interested into your presentation?
Yeah, I will post it to the Facebook group.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. And okay, if you're doing something similar, would be interesting to hear from you.
Yeah, definitely. You were choosing Databricks, for example. We went another way, so it would be interesting to hear a little bit more there. So I'll connect. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, exactly. This group is actually specifically for this, to help each other.
Yeah.
To get the most of this. So you can put your hand down, Vifus, if you're stuck.
Sorry. Yeah.
So no more questions. So I think we can
just 1 second. Only, do you have anything you want to say? No. Okay. All right. No. Okay.
Okay. So I think we're done. I'll just say have a nice weekend, and hopefully we will see you again.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.